Margaret stood frozen at the warehouse door, her trembling hand gripping the rusty key that had been hidden in Thomas's desk for 43 years. The same key she'd watched him slip into his pocket every morning before heading to work. The same key that had kept this place locked away from her, from everyone, for nearly half a century. 3 weeks had passed since the funeral. 3 weeks since she'd buried the man who'd been her everything, her anchor in this world. Thomas had died suddenly of a heart attack at 72, leaving behind only whispered apologies and this mysterious key with a note that simply read, "Open it when I'm gone. You'll understand everything then." The warehouse sat at the edge of their property, a structure Thomas had built himself in 1981, just 2 years after they'd married. She remembered asking him about it once, early in their marriage, but his face had grown so pale, so pained, that she'd never brought it up again. It became an unspoken rule between them. The warehouse was Thomas's domain, and she was to stay away. But now, standing before the weathered wooden door, as the autumn wind whipped through her graying hair, Margaret felt a mixture of grief and determination. Whatever Thomas had been hiding, whatever had caused him to lock himself away in here for hours each weekend, she deserved to know. The key turned easily, as if it had been waiting for this moment. The door creaked open, and immediately a warm, golden light spilled out into the darkening evening. But this wasn't electric light. It was something else, something that made her skin tingle and her heart race. Margaret stepped inside, and her breath caught in her throat. The warehouse wasn't a warehouse at all. It was a sanctuary. The walls were lined with hundreds of photographs, but these weren't ordinary pictures. They glowed softly, as if lit from within, and each one showed a moment of pure joy, pure love, pure miracle. There were images of children taking their first steps, of couples reuniting after years apart, of healing that defied medical explanation, of lives transformed by inexplicable grace. But it was the center of the room that made Margaret's knees buckle. There, suspended in the air by some invisible force, was a massive tree made entirely of light. Its branches stretched toward the ceiling, pulsing with a gentle, rhythmic glow that reminded her of a heartbeat. And hanging from every branch, like luminous fruit, were more photographs, thousands of them, all radiating the same warm, golden light. Margaret moved closer, her footsteps echoing in the sacred space. As she approached the tree, she could see that each photograph was labeled with a date, a location, and a name. Her hand shook as she read them. Sarah Martinez, terminal cancer, cured January 15, 1982. Michael Chen, lost son found alive after 10 years, March 3, 1987. Elena Rodriguez, is blind since birth, sight restored August 12, 1994. The dates went back decades. Some were from before she'd even met Thomas. "What is this place?" she whispered, her voice barely audible in the reverent silence. That's when she noticed the desk in the corner, surrounded by neat stacks of letters, journals, and more photographs. With trembling hands, she opened the top journal, and Thomas's familiar handwriting filled the page. Day 1247. Today I helped Maria Santos find her missing daughter. The light showed me where to look. The tree grew brighter, and another photograph appeared on its branches. I still don't understand how this works, but I know I can't stop. People need help, and somehow I'm the vessel for something greater than myself. Margaret flipped through page after page, each entry documenting another miracle, another life saved, another prayer answered. But it was the final entry, dated just 1 week before Thomas's death, that made her sink into the chair. My beloved Margaret, if you're reading this, then the time has come for you to know the truth. 43 years ago, I was dying. The doctors gave me 3 months to live. I was 29 years old, and I hadn't even met you yet. I came to this empty land to build a place where I could die in peace, away from everyone who loved me. But something happened here. As I dug the foundation, I found something buried in the earth, a seed that glowed like a star. The moment I touched it, I knew it wasn't of this world. I planted it, and overnight, it grew into the tree you see before you. The tree that saved my life, that gave me for decades, I wasn't supposed to have. But it came with a responsibility. The tree shows me people in need, people whose stories need a miracle. And I've spent every weekend for 43 years answering that call. I've reunited families, guided doctors to impossible cures, helped lost souls find their way home. Each act of service makes the tree grow brighter, and each miracle becomes part of its light. I never told you because I was afraid you'd think I was losing my mind. But more than that, I was afraid you'd want to help, and I couldn't bear the thought of you carrying this burden. You were my peace, my normal life, my anchor to the world I was fighting to save. The tree is dying now, as I am. Its light grows dimmer each day, and I know my time is ending. But I believe I have to believe that it chose me for a reason, just as it will choose the next guardian. I pray it's not you, my love. You've given me enough. You've given me everything. Margaret's tears fell onto the pages, smearing the ink. She looked up at the tree, and for the first time, she noticed that its light was indeed dimming. Some of the photographs were beginning to fade, their edges becoming translucent. She stood and walked to the tree, reaching out tentatively to touch one of the glowing branches. The moment her fingers made contact, the entire tree blazed with brilliant light, and suddenly she could see. Images flooded her mind, people in desperate need, scattered across the world. A father in Brazil searching for his kidnapped son. A mother in India praying for her daughter's recovery from a rare disease. An elderly man in Scotland who'd lost the will to live after his wife's death. Dozens of them, hundreds of them, all calling out for help, for hope, for a miracle. The tree wasn't dying. It was waiting. Margaret understood now why Thomas had kept this secret, why he'd borne this responsibility alone for so long. The weight of all that suffering, all those pleas for help, was overwhelming. But underneath the weight, she felt something else, a deep, biting sense of purpose, of connection to something infinitely greater than herself. She thought of Thomas, of the man who'd spent 43 years quietly saving lives while living. His own borrowed time. She thought of all the weekends he'd claimed to be working on projects, all the times he'd come home exhausted, but somehow more peaceful than when he'd left. She thought of his gentle hands, his kind eyes, the way he'd always seemed to know exactly what to say to make everything better. He'd been a guardian angel, and she'd never even known. The tree pulsed again, and Margaret felt a warmth spreading. Through her chest, she closed her eyes and made her choice. "I accept," she whispered. The light exploded around her, and suddenly she wasn't alone. Thomas stood beside her, young and healthy as he'd been on their wedding day, his hand reaching for hers. His touch was warm, real, and when he smiled, it was with the same love that had sustained her for 43 years. "I was hoping you'd say that," he said, his voice carrying the echo of eternity. "But I had to let you choose. Will you stay?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "For a while," he said, squeezing her hand. "Long enough to teach you, to help you understand how to use the gift. But this is your calling now, Margaret, your time to serve." Margaret looked at the tree, at the photographs of lives saved and families reunited, at the light that now pulsed in rhythm with her own heartbeat. The weight of responsibility was still there, but it no longer felt like a burden. It felt like coming home. "We'll do it together," she said, and Thomas smiled. Together, he agreed, just like everything else. As the weeks passed, Margaret learned to read the tree's messages, to understand its guidance. She discovered that the miracles weren't magic. They were about being in the right place at the right time, saying the right words, making the right words. Connections. The tree didn't create the miracles. It simply showed her where love was needed most. Thomas stayed with her through those early days, his presence growing fainter, but never disappearing entirely. He taught her how to document each miracle, how to care for the tree, how to balance this sacred duty with the world outside. And slowly, as Margaret found her rhythm, as she began to save lives and answer prayers, she realized that Thomas had given her the greatest gift of all. He'd shown her that love doesn't end with death. It transforms, it transcends. It becomes something eternal and beautiful and infinitely powerful. Every miracle she facilitated was a testament to that love. Every life she touched was proof that their bond could never be broken. The tree grew brighter under Margaret's care, its branches reaching higher, its light touching more lives than ever before. And sometimes, late at night, when the golden glow was strongest, she could swear she felt Thomas's hand in hers, his voice whispering words of encouragement, his love surrounding her like a warm embrace. She'd thought she was opening a door to discover Thomas's secret. Instead, she'd found her way home to a love that would last forever, and a purpose that would give meaning to whatever time she had left. The tree pulsed with gentle light, and Margaret smiled, knowing that somewhere in the world, another prayer was about to be answered, another miracle was about to unfold, and another life was about to be touched by the kind of love that never dies. In the end, that was Thomas's greatest secret. Not the tree, not the miracles, but the truth that love. Real love is the most powerful force in the universe. And now, it was hers to share with the world, one miracle at a time. The tree grew, brighter under Margaret's care, its branches reaching higher, its light touching more lives than ever before. And sometimes, late at night, when the golden glow was strongest, she could swear she felt Thomas's hand in hers, his voice whispering words of encouragement, his love surrounding her like a warm embrace.